Hello and welcome to the WeLEAP Enlightening Talk series. I am Durgesh Chandel. I am the founder of WeLEAP campaign. And today I have the immense pleasure of having Dr. Nadia Figueroa. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering and Applied Mechanics at the University of Pennsylvania. And her research is focused on human-aware robotic systems. She has also been a postdoctoral researcher at MIT Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, also known as CSAIL. And that's where I met her, actually. We have been working together at the Researcher and PostDoc Association of Aeronautics and Astronautics at MIT. She holds a PhD degree in robotics control and intelligent systems from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne, also known as EPFL. Nadia was also a finalist for the Georges Gerald PhD Award in 2020, which is basically the best European PhD thesis in robotics. And she has also been at KUKA Innovation Award in 2017. So today I am pleased to have her here, and we will be going into a much more detail of her journey throughout her career, and we will learn from her story. So let's get started. So Nadia, welcome.
Thank you, Durgesh. Thank you for inviting me and for that nice introduction.
Yeah, so I think I'll start with the very basic question here. I think it will be very useful for everybody to know your background and what inspired you to get into aerospace.
So my journey into aerospace is a little bit, it's not so, let's say, linear. So I was initially interested in designing roller coasters. So I was more kind of like on the mechanical engineering, mechatronics, but also one of my, let's say, childhood dreams was to work at NASA at some point. Because that was, I think that's kind of like the goal for everyone that's and ends up working in the astro department or doing something related to robotics or to aeronautics, right? So that was kind of like, you know, like a childhood dream. Like, oh, it was so cool to be an engineer in at NASA and work with like the robots that they send to space and things like that. So yeah, that's how I started. So like I ended up doing a bachelor's in mechatronics in Mexico, but because at that time in 2003, 4, that was the only degree in Mexico actually that offered mechanics and electronics and computer science, like it all together. There wasn't a degree in robotics or in cybernetics or anything like that. So that was the one. So I ended up going to Monterrey Tech, which is in the north of Mexico, and I studied that there. And that's where I kind of like discovered my passion for robotics initially. So like my goal of working for NASA was always kind of like in the back of my mind. But then I kind of like focused on robotics, and that came up when I actually did a summer exchange in Germany. So like when you study mechatronics, like most of the time, like either you go to the US to do like an internship or a semester abroad, or to Germany, right? Like Germany is where all of the technology is being developed in Europe. So I went there, and that's where I was like exposed to like all of the advanced robotic systems that were being used in manufacturing and industry, just building robots, building cars, you know, like with fully autonomous robotic factories, like back in 2006, 2007. And for me, that was like so inspiring. Like, oh, I want to know how they control this, how they program all of these robots to be able to be so efficient and build these kind of like complex, you know, mechanisms. So then that's when I came back to Mexico, finished my degree. And I was and I already knew that I wanted to do a master's thesis, and like I wanted to go back to Germany to like focus deeper on that, you know, like to focus deeper on automation and robotics. but before doing that, I ended up working some time in Mexico just to gain some industry experience, to see, you know, like I was young, so I wanted to have some work experience as well before going directly into a master's degree. Which at that time in Mexico, it was always like you finish your degree and you go to work, you know, like going to a master, going to like further academic career, like that didn't even exist, or like my parents didn't think that was something that you can make a living out of. Like, why do you keep studying when you can just go work, you know, like, and make money. So that's why I ended up working, because I needed to kind of like convince my parents to basically fund my master thesis in Germany, and to show them that I was serious, that I wanted to study because I wanted to further my career. So then that's where I ended up. So I went to Germany, and at first I wasn't even thinking about really like pursuing an academic career or anything like that. I just wanted to learn, you know, like I just wanted to learn like these new technologies that I saw that I wasn't exposed to in Mexico. But then I ended up doing my master thesis in the German Space Center, which is kind of like the equivalent of NASA, but in Germany. And that was the eye-opening moment for me. So there I worked with like not industrial robots anymore, but like actual humanoid robots, which now they are planning to send to space, to the International Space Station, or to teleoperate, for example, in the moon and things like that. And back then they were developing it, and now they're still working on that in the German Space Center. If you Google the DLR, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of robots that they are building so that people can teleoperate them, or the astronauts can teleoperate them from the shuttles and things like that. So that really opened my eyes, and I saw everyone there at the institute kind of like working, and that was their job, to do research, you know, like, so, and that's when I said, okay, this is what I want to do. So like I want to do research in robotics. If it's applied to space, then it's amazing, but it could also be applied to basically problems here on Earth, you know, like for human robot interaction and collaboration.
Okay, that was a great journey you had. And I can totally relate, you know, growing up in a developing country where we don't have these specific branches of engineering common. So for example, even in India, like we just had computer science, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering when I was growing up. So yeah, it's so inspirational how you found your way. You know, you keep using the resources you had at the moment. And you also mentioned a little bit about convincing your parents, and I can totally relate to that, because in India as well, like when I was thinking about having aerospace engineering for a career, I was told that, oh, it's a male dominated field. What will you do there? How will you survive? How will you make living of it? Because even if there were options to take this in as a degree, there were not enough job options. Mm-hmm. So it's really wonderful and it's inspirational how you know, kept going. And so many of us, like our fellow colleagues, they don't even realize this, like people coming from developing country go through this. So thank you for sharing that. So yeah, so I will move to the next question. So then how was your vision about your career in high school? Like, were you always thinking about like, okay, I really want to go for higher studies and do something really great? And then what played a role to you know, inspire you? Did you have any role model at that time?
Well, it's a spam call. Yeah, so during high school, it was interesting because I was a little bit lost when I started high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was really good in all of the math and physics courses. So like I knew that was, and I was really bad at all the humanities, and they were so boring for me. So I was like, I'm never going to study anything related to that. Like I knew that I wanted to do something related to math or physics or programming. I remember like the very first programming class that I took was in high school, and it was like C++. And programming, you know, kind of like like a store, you know, application where you have the products and the people come in and they and you build up the receipt and you total everything. And so like that for me was like, oh, that's so cool that I can like learn how to, you know, like program all of these things that people use in the world. So for me that was really interesting, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do until not until the end, like not until we had to decide, because in the high school that I went to, it was it was focused on kind of like furthering you into higher education. So for the last year you had to choose a focus, like do you want to do math, physics, do you want to do humanities, do you want to do more like administration, accounting, to kind of like push you towards the degree that you want. But in order to do that, if you weren't sure, then they made some tests, like aptitude tests, or like the type of tests that can help us a student who doesn't know what they want to do, and give them options of like what are the possible, you know, like a career that you can have, given your interests and given what you think you're good at. I was also really good at all the, like, as I said, like all the math and physics courses. Like the professors like treated me special. They even gave me like a more difficult exam sometimes because I was so bored. And I would help all of my friends, you know, like in the further exams, and I would join those like extracurricular like math Olympics groups, and then like try to compete, you know, like against other students in the state and things like that. So like I was always kind of like more driven of like curiosity and just like I'm always trying not to be bored basically, and that started very young. So like for me, something challenging, something that makes my brain work, like that's that's when I'm happy. And for me was doing something related to math, to physics, to engineering, to computing. So yeah, I didn't really know. I knew that that was something I'm interested in, that, and I was good in that, but I had no prospect of something further, because all of my parents, they're both doctors, they're like dentists. Most of my family, they're in the medical field, and they were kind of like hoping that I would be there, like that I would become a doctor, or that I would take over the clinic or something like that, you know. And then I would actually like intern for my parents. Like I learned how to do cleanings, teeth cleanings, and all these things, because, and I wasn't afraid of blood or anything like that. Like I could have gone into that route, but that was just not what was most interesting for me. And they realized that. So they just they just kind of like ended up supporting me for whatever I wanted to do. And then I took those tests of the aptitude test, and like, okay, like some engineering you know, like course. And then that's when I started to look in Mexico, like where can I go, which a degree has like everything that I'm interested in, which was mechanics, electronics, and computing, like almost everything that you need for robotics, but that didn't exist. So that's how I ended up going into mechatronics. And what's interesting is when I started in the mechatronics degree, it only one student had graduated from that university, like it was just starting.
Okay.
From mechatronics. So like so yeah, I mean that's how I ended up going into that field.
Yeah, no, I asked that question because high school is like such an important time, because that's where you decide which direction you want to take your career into, but also you don't have enough knowledge. And if you are not surrounded by people from same field, you may not even know, you know, what are the challenges or the opportunities for this field. So it's great that you at least exposed yourself to different opportunities. And I think that kind of helped you to prepare for the next phase. So all the high schoolers listening here, and make note of that.
Also, I think it was more of like a little bit of a rebellion against my parents as well, because they wanted me to become a doctor or a dentist. And I did end up becoming a doctor, but not in the medical field, you know. So I found something that I found interesting. So yeah.
That's amazing. Like not just taking an easy path, but rather, you know, listening to your heart and going after what you really, really want. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so now, like, okay, once you made up your mind and you moved to undergraduate program, so did you face any particular struggles? Like, what were your biggest struggles during that time? And did you kind of like regretted your decision anytime that, oh, perhaps I should have just gone into medicine, or how was the experience?
No, I don't think I never regretted that. Yeah, I never regretted studying mechatronics. I was really happy. Like I really liked my college experience. The only thing, I mean, the only kind of like adversities were that I really had to adapt to the fact of being literally the only woman in a classroom. You know, like at that time, like from our batch that we started like 100 students at the beginning, and we were like 3 or 4 women. And by the end of the 5-year degree, the same 3 or 4 women stayed. And then like only like 50 or like less of the percents of the male students actually ended up graduating. Like they moved to other degrees, which were easier because mechatronics was the hardest one. Because you basically take all the main courses from mechanical engineering, from electrical engineering, from computer science. So it was one of the more difficult. It was one of the more difficult course degrees. And the only thing that I mean, what I really faced was kind of like somehow like discrimination from the male students, because they didn't really understand that that I could be there and that I could have better grades than them. So they would always say, oh, you paid off the professor, or you gave the professor a gift, or just because you're a woman, the professor is like giving you highest grades. But then when they started to work with me, then by the end, everyone wanted to be like working with me as a team, you know, for team projects and things like that, because they realized that, oh, she's here because she wants to be here. Not because because most men, at least what I saw is like they chose that degree because that was the degree that had the most potential of like getting a higher salary, because you're basically learning like about all of the engineerings, so you can do anything, you know, like with mechatronics. So it was marketed at that time as like being one of the most difficult, but at the same time the highest paid or highest rewarded degree to have. So a lot of students like kind of like go for those types of degrees just because of what they're gonna get like afterwards. So yeah, so it was kind of like I mean, I faced that, but I think, I mean, I don't remember it affecting me that much. I mean, I guess I was just too confident at that time. And I'm like, okay, if you don't think I'm good enough, I don't really care. I mean, I'm happy in my life. Like, but what was interesting was like, obviously none of my friends were female friends, or even male, like very few of my friends, like from my hometown, ended up like in studying the same thing. Like I was kind of like the only one that studied mechatronics, apart from 2 other friends from my high school, which we all ended up going to doing masters abroad and things like that. So we were people that really wanted to study that because we wanted to like learn, you know, like not just to get a degree such that you can get a good job afterwards.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like, thank you for sharing that. Your story is so similar to what I experienced. And I think several other women in aerospace have experienced, because like we were I was also the only one in my class in undergrad, and exactly whatever you went through, I went through the same thing. And I was just left on my own to do any assignments or anything because nobody wanted to be my friend.
Yes. Yeah. Like at the beginning, no one wants to talk to you. No one wants to work with you. But then when they see that you're getting the highest grades, then they want to like, then they want to group with you to basically get better grades as well.
Yeah, it's like if you are shining, then everybody will come to you. But if you know, you want friends, you want to have discussion, then nobody will come. And once you succeed, then you will hear things like, oh, you are a girl, that's why you got it. Yeah. And of course, like we learn to ignore it. But I would really recommend like anybody listening to this, and if they can, you know, stop such comments, because at that time when we are doing our undergraduate degree, we already have a lot of other stress to go through.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, discrimination. So it will be great if, you know, everybody can just work together. So
And
Thank you.
I want to add one more thing. One thing that you said, like we do learn to ignore it, but it's still in us, you know,
Yeah.
and that's what happens like when you go on to like higher pursuing higher degrees or going on to other places. Like you are, at least I always feel like I have to show that I'm worthy in any new place that I go to. And I think that's because of that experience that I had when I was an undergrad, where I have to basically prove to all of the other students that I was good enough to be there. So then you stay with that, you know, like you stay with that, and that's what even builds the whole imposter syndrome and all of that. I mean, and it goes with you like for until like now. Like I still feel it sometimes, but I can identify it. You know, I say, okay, no, like it's this saboteur that's talking to me in my head, but it's from my previous experiences, and you just have to kind of like ignore it or do something against it, like in your head. But I mean, it stays with you for sure.
Yeah, that's true. Like those statements sometimes just keep flashing in our mind, and you know, it just like doesn't feel good to be judged like that. So yeah, it will be great if, you know, all the people listening this can, you know, do something about it and just support each other. Okay, so let's go to our next question. So let's talk about like, so what was your biggest achievement during undergrad? Something which you were proud of and which increased your confidence?
My biggest achievement, I don't think I had like one specific. I had some really good experiences being in projects that were kind of like related to industry. So like in Mexico, like, you know, like in that specific university, it's like an industrial hub. So we had the opportunity, for example, to go to Whirlpool, and which they have like a plant there, a factory where they build like all of the new refrigerators, and they have like an R&D part, and they have these really cool, you know, like programs to bring engineers, like students that are studying engineering, to come up with new designs. They tell us like, oh, we have this new refrigerator that we want to make it in this like as much smaller, like a mini version of this big one. What like can you propose like a new design for it? So we were really exposed to like a real world engineering problems. That would have like a direct impact. Like if I wanted to go directly to work there, I would have gone directly to work to one of these like R&D centers in Mexico, to just keep on developing, you know, like new ways of manufacturing or things like that. So that was something that I thought was really cool. I think one of the in terms, like personally, I was one of the achievements was that I was kind of like the president of the graduating committee. And it was cool because I was like one of the only female students, and I was like the president of that committee, and I gathered everyone together, you know, all the students, and we ended up like organizing a really cool party with all of our parents and things like that. So that really helped me kind of like in the more like soft skills that I didn't really have, and being able to interact with a whole bunch of people and just gather people together, and figuring out, you know, like what everyone's needs, like how to just like how to organize these types of like large events with a lot of people. I thought that was a really cool experience for me as well. And I mean, also the study abroad experience that I had. I think that those were the more life-changing ones that really shaped kind of like my career, like being able to go to Germany, you know, like and just see what everything that they're doing there, and knowing, because I even took courses there, and I was competitive like with the standards of Germany. So I was like, okay, so that's pretty cool, you know, like even if I'm from a developing country where probably they don't go so deep in the math and the theory, because they're more focused on the manufacturing and just basically training engineers that can go directly to work and manage factories. I could understand the more, you know, like abstract mathematical concept that they were teaching in Germany. So that I think that was a really cool experience for me, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And in order to be successful in a long-term research career, we do need like so many qualities apart from just being technically sound and like, really knowing our stuff and doing critical research. So yeah, and it starts right from undergrad actually. And sometimes I see undergraduate students hating whatever group projects or internships or other opportunities they have. And they will be like, when am I gonna use it? But see here how you use it. So that's why we are presenting these talks
Yeah.
to have like to help students appreciate whatever opportunities they are getting. And definitely, yeah,
It's
coming.
experience, right? Like it's experience. And even if that's not something that you ended up liking, like at least now you know that that's not what you like, and then you can explore other parts of your degree or field.
Yeah. And also like coming from a developing country, we don't have like similar opportunities there. So of course, like, as an international student in US or Europe, you have to find your way to find those opportunities and then make the best use of it. So thanks for being a good example for that. So, okay. So now let's go a little bit into your graduate studies time. So how did you like your PhD journey at EPFL? And like how was the experience, and did it encourage you to be a professor later in life? How was it?
Well, once I arrived at EPFL, I already knew that I wanted to be a professor. So like even during my interview for the PhD program, like my PhD advisor, she asked me like, why do you want to do a PhD? I said, because I want to be a professor. Like I already knew that. I had done a master's degree beforehand in Germany, and I was exposed to like the whole research experience there already. So like I was there, did my PhD, my thesis at the DLR, and then I went before the PhD. I went to work at NYU in Abu Dhabi as a research assistant. So I already had a lot of research experience. So I already knew that I wanted that, and that was kind of like the goal. And indeed, like my PhD advisor took it very much at heart, and she kind of like, okay, yeah. So I was saying I already had a considerable amount of experience before starting my PhD, so I already knew that that I wanted to be a professor, and or at least that I wanted to pursue an academic career. Also because I already had the industry experience in Mexico, so I knew that that wasn't really fulfilling for me. So at the end, it was exciting to learn about different production lines and different processes that are being used to develop new products in factories, but it ended up being kind of like repetitive and boring at the end of the day. So it was not really challenging. So for me, the PhD and doing and becoming a professor was kind of like it ended up being kind of like the best job that I wanted to do, or like my new dream job, like, okay, now I know what I want. I want to be a professor. I want to be able to do research. I want to teach. So I started my PhD already with that mindset. And my PhD advisor, she really gave me the opportunity to explore the teaching. So like I did a lot of teaching during my PhD. I taught with her a lot of graduate level machine learning courses. We developed the course together from scratch, like learning how to program different machine learning algorithms, which are very practical. So for me, I realized that, and I think that's from my experience of being an international student. So like when I went to Germany to do my master's, I realized that I hadn't studied so much in my life until I arrived in Germany, because I just didn't have the background, and it wasn't just me, it was me and all of the Latin American students. We realized that we were looking at these like really advanced control and mathematical concepts, and all of the European students grasped the concepts immediately, and we were all like puzzled. Like like literally. So for me, it's really important to give the whole experience when I'm teaching. Like I go theory and then practice, like how do you but first understand the theory, and then through the practice or through implementing things, then you can understand the theory, because that's basically how I understood everything. And that was my way of learning what I do now.
That's so wonderful. First thing that you already knew that you want to be a professor. So I think you aligned your activities during PhD according to that. And that immensely helped you in your, the next step, I guess. And the second thing, because you have experienced a lot of struggles, coming from a developing country yourself. So now you understand your students better and you design the courses in that way. And actually same thing is true for I think most of us coming from these international backgrounds, or even going through any kind of adversity, we become better, and we want to treat everybody else in a better way. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so were there any struggles during PhD, or was it like all good?
No, definitely not. Like,
What was the
I mean,
biggest struggle?
so I guess the biggest struggle was more like being able to find a balance. Because I was so driven from the beginning, like I really put my standards really high up for my PhD advisor. So those standards never went down. So it was always like expecting better and better things from me. And it was also more internally like myself, like that thing that's we want to show that we're good and we want to show that we're the best, just to like be treated equally. That really kind of like resonated and became exploded during my PhD. Like I really just wanted to be not the best, but at least like do like just be able to take it into advantage the opportunity that I had of that of being there in Switzerland and being able to do my PhD there, where the thinking about where I came from, like, so for me it was a lot of like internal pressure of being of just like achieving like higher goals that I set myself, and that they made me were even higher than what my PhD advisor even had expected from me. So managing that, obviously it didn't help with my work-life balance. It didn't help at all with my mental health. So I struggled a lot. I had to, and the first years, it was a big struggle because I was new. It was mostly like male students there, so I couldn't really find someone to connect with in those type of topics. And what really helped me was other female students and postdocs that joined the lab, and then we just ended up like talking and connecting, and then just expressing everything, and then we ended up like I ended up becoming friends with all of the other male students, and then by the end it was okay. So like by the end it was good, but yeah, it was mostly kind of like psychological, like, to be honest, because of the work itself. It was a lot of work, but and a lot of pressure, but it was imposed by myself or just by the environment. Like you need to deliver, you need to write papers. Sometimes they're rejected, and then it really depends on how you take those rejections, how you learn from mistakes that you did before, like not harp on the things that went wrong and just try to learn from them. So like just learning basically how to navigate that whole experience, like from mentally, like psychologically, like that was really hard for me. But yeah, like at the end you succeed. Well, at least I did. So and I mean, doing a PhD is all about that, right? Like you can be a genius, but like if you don't have the perseverance, if you don't have the patience, if you don't have the drive, then it's going to end up boggling you mentally. So like you really need to build up like a backbone and strong kind of like healthy habits of just living your life. Yeah. Because it's not a 9-to-5 job. Like even if you want to try to do it, it's like it's really not even for the professors. Like so it's not.
Yeah, I totally agree to that. And I mean, during PhD, of course, it's intellectually challenging, but more than that, it's psychologically challenging. And yeah, of course, like being a woman, we often don't have enough women in our labs or our classes. So it definitely helps if you have people in your friend circle who are going through similar situations, so that they can understand you rather than just undermining your struggles. Yeah. That is like a big factor also. But of course, in the end, it's all about the perseverance and your drive. So thank you for sharing. Okay, so I also wanted to learn more about how was your experience at MIT, and how did it help your, goal of being a professor? What all activities did you do?
So when, like, my experience at MIT was a little bit, I guess not the typical experience, because I arrived a month before COVID started. So most of my time was working alone or working just with a couple of students in the lab once we got access to the robots. And it was all virtual. So it was when everyone kind of like went to like Zoom, basically. So at the beginning, it was very lonely. I did end up like going into a depression, I guess, the first couple of months. But the way that I deal with depression is work. So I ended up being very productive. So like there's always a silver lining, right? Like I ended up like writing some really cool papers with PhD students there in the lab that we didn't really even think about working together, but because we had to go back to working in simulation or from our apartments, then we all wanted to basically do something, like so we ended up doing some really cool work. I mean, it was an amazing experience for me, really. I mean, the caliber of the PhD students at MIT, I guess it's incomparable to anywhere else in the world. So like it was really it was very, eye-opening for me, and also like it just got my creative juices like going, like saying like, okay, well, I talked to one student and they like this idea, and then they went with it, and then we ended up with a really cool paper and really good results, and just having all of these like conversations with really smart people, it just makes you smarter, basically, and it makes you think about problems in a different way. So yeah, one of the things was, and obviously like my PI at MIT, Julie Shah, like she is one of the best people in the world, and like to be a professor, she's one of the best advisors. Like she was the one actually that pushed me into applying for faculty positions last year, because I thought I wasn't ready. Like I thought I wasn't ready, and I was going to apply this year. So I wanted to wait one more year to apply for faculty positions. And she was like, no, like you're ready, go now, start like she's like 6 months before the deadlines. Like she was like, start asking for recommendation letters, start thinking about your statements and about everything. So like she was really the one that helped me kind of like build the confidence that I didn't have. So yeah, it was really life-changing for me going to MIT, because it just kind of like all of the insecurities that I still had, let's say, like once I finished my PhD, they just went. I mean, they didn't just go away. Like I realized that I shouldn't put importance in them, because I'm good enough. And not just good enough, like I'm good, like so. And I just needed to have that experience, and having a mentor that is such a cheerleader and that really helps you and encouraging you to like to do your best, like it's amazing. So for me, that was like that really was a cool experience, and exposing me, like to different schools of thought or ways of thinking, or different ways of approaching the problems in robotics that I'm interested in. And also it helped me kind of like expand my vision from what I thought I wanted to do with like finishing my PhD. Like now I have like a much broader vision, which obviously helped me write my statements and all of that, like for faculty applications.
Yeah, and yeah, I totally agree. Professor Julie Shah, she is amazing. And you and I, we met quite late too, because I joined at MIT just like 2 months before the lockdown. So we were not able to meet at all, but we started the Researchers and Postdocs Association activities together. So that's where I met you. And yeah,
and that's one of the reasons I joined that association, because I was really depressed. I didn't know anyone. Like at the beginning of the pandemic, I really didn't know anyone apart from the PhD students from my lab that I met only virtually, or that I only met like once or twice like in person. before lockdown, and I didn't know any other postdoc or any other kind of like more senior researcher. And when I saw that they were like starting to create this group, I was like, yeah, I need to join this group, like at least to talk to other postdocs that are going through the same thing.
Yeah, I was the vice president at that time, and you were one of the founding and innovation chairs, and you really played a key role in, planning some of the good activities there. So now I am the president in that association. So we are ensuring to have, higher level of professional activities and more engagement. So definitely we will be needing you again there as a speaker or
Sure.
something. Okay, so I think now I will go to your experience at NIU and DLR. So how did it benefit your career plan being a professor?
Well, so at the DLR, I mean, that's when I did my master thesis. So the DLR really helped me. It exposed me to the possibility of doing research as a living, which that wasn't even part of my mind, like that wasn't even a possibility, like coming from Mexico, like, oh, are you gonna be like, you're gonna be a researcher, you're gonna be poor, basically, because in Mexico they don't really like pay well, like to be a professor in like universities and things like that. So it's not really something that was common back then. Like now it's a little bit different. Now some universities are doing a very good job in investing in research. But coming from a developing country, I mean, that's not the first thing that the governments like really like focus on investing on. So in the minds of people, like even when I was doing my PhD, when I was doing a postdoc, like family members, which were not part of, like not my mom and dad or whatever, like were like, why are you still studying? Like they didn't really even understand like that I was, like training to be a professor. Like, what does that even mean? Like, why are you still in the university? Like, well, like that mentality is still in Mexico right now. So for me, going to the DLR was a really like let's say a milestone, because that's when I realized like, oh, all of these people, like they're researchers, like they finish their PhDs and they're working in the space center, like developing robots for space. Like how cool is that? Like, and they have good salaries, they have good jobs, like they're thriving, they have a happy life. Like of course it's something that you can do, but it's just not something that you can do in Mexico. Like that, I didn't know that, and that's what exposed me to that. And then at the end, NYU was my first kind of like academic experience, like at a university, like where I actually had to interact with students, supervise students, help out with classes and TAing. And all of that experience also, I thought it was really cool for me, because then that's really showed me that like what the experience of being an academic would be. And I really liked it. So I was like, oh, I like the flexibility. I like being able to be creative, being able to try and succeed or fail, which is not something that you can do like in industry. So like this, so those two experiences, I think, really shaped me into knowing or to understanding, like basically like an academic career, being a professor is what I wanted to do and what's going to make me happy at the end.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. So this ends the part 1 of our talk today. And so to everybody listening, we will be continuing with Dr. Nadia Figueroa for learning a little bit more about the projects going on in her group. And we will learn about her career, like the awards she has received so far, and more about her daily life as a professor, and how she manages work, and a lot of other things to come. So stay tuned.